only are you, Congressman, able to communicate in plain English to Americans, but the things that you said in 2 or 3 minutes were so compelling. So, if you don't mind, I'd like to start right there. First of all, you're a congressman in one of the wealthiest districts in Florida, if not the country. You're a congressman in a district that is perhaps 3/4 Caucasian. Isn't this an example that people are yearning for representatives who represent liberty and private property rights and the Constitution and limited government and rational spending? Isn't that pretty much what your constituency is all about?
That's absolutely correct. My constituents are a mixture of a lot of things. People who grew up in the area, so you might have some third, fourth, fifth generation Southwest Floridians. And then you have a lot of retirees, people who have retired out of the Rust Belt states and from other parts around the country. Some did incredibly well in their lives. Some did very good in their lives. Some were able to be consistent savers and wanted to retire to a great place to live. And, I get asked often in Capitol Hill, what's the thing that your district really wants? And I tell them, my district just wants to be left alone. They want the Washington, D.C. to follow the Constitution. We do have water issues that we want repaired. But other than that, they just want to be left alone. They want a representative who's going to be conservative, who's going to stick to our Constitution, who's going to stand for liberty, like you said. And after that, just do common sense things. My philosophy has always been the federal government should do a few things, do them efficiently, do them well. Everything else needs to be left to the states and to the people. And that's what the people of my congressional district want.
And yet there you are in Nancy Pelosi's House of Representatives, which is the most radical ever, quite frankly, pushing through one outrageous bill after another to nationalize elections, to open the borders, to do all kinds of things. She knows it's not going to get too far in the Senate, at least we hope not, but they're pushing the President of the United States, Byron, with executive orders to do things unilaterally in violation of the Constitution and separation of powers. So you show up in this House of Representatives, which is utterly and completely, in my view, out of control. What do you make of this?
This place is, frankly, a destruction of our republic, the way it's operating right now. We're not meeting in committees. Nancy Pelosi's just pushing agenda item after agenda item directly to the floor. Frankly, they're moderate, whatever moderate Democrats are left, they're being put on the line for some of the most radical policies we've ever seen. And I think the bigger point on this, Mark, is the Democrats never ran on any of this. Joe Biden never ran on this bill about defunding the police. They never ran on taking over the election process at the federal level. They never ran on shutting down Keystone Pipeline or opening up the southern border. The only thing they ever ran on was, quote unquote, saving our democracy, which I still don't even know what that means. But I will tell you, having been in the nation's capital for about 2 months, what they're doing is destroying the republic. Because our country and our government, frankly, can't survive a process where the members have no input on anything. Even the Democrat rank and file members don't have input on anything. This is just radical policy after radical policy that the American people were never told about during the election process.
And as you're explaining, the American people have no say. If you don't have committee hearings, subcommittees, full committees where their representatives, your constituents, have somebody there representing their interests who they can contact and say, wait a minute, before you vote on that bill, I have a few thoughts, I have some questions, this is how it affects me. What you're telling me, it's all top down, it's being hatched out of the Speaker's office, she pushes it through, she forces a vote, and that's that.
That's exactly right. That is the process that's happening right now on Capitol Hill. And it's atrocious. As somebody who, growing up, I didn't care about politics growing up. My family didn't really care much about politics. We were registered Democrats. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. That's where I'm from. I came to politics later in life. Conservatism really found me. And that was because of what was happening in our financial collapse about 12 years ago and the outrageous response of TARP bailouts and stuff like that I just didn't agree with. And so when you start looking at, the history of governments overall and even the history of our government, you understand that, a government like ours works when you have disparate input from members who, frankly, don't agree on a lot of these issues. But you got to have that input. The way this is happening right now, this is all coming out of Silicon Valley. This is all coming out of Manhattan. And unfortunately, this is all coming out of the White House, where you, frankly, have people who are leftists. You have people who are radicals, who are pushing this narrative. They are pushing this agenda, and they're never going to stop.
And the rest of the country goes unrepresented. Nancy Pelosi, San Francisco, Schumer, New York City, Biden, Wilmington. There's a big country out there. The whole point of the House of Representatives, it's called the House of Representatives. The whole point of elections every 2 years is so when you go back, you're held to account for the things that you have done. And Nancy Pelosi is running the House of Representatives like a dictator. This is really absolutely shocking. When we come back, Congressman, I want